0.3% of total revenue was created from Google Ads. So welcome back to the Founder-Led Marketing Show, where we talk about how to create awareness, build trust, generate demand, and drive efficient growth for your B2B software startups. In this episode, we talk to Sam Kuehnle, who's the VP of Marketing at Loxo, and we dive into his decision on cutting all Google Ads and paid search spend for their company, saving over $100,000 in spend. How he made the decision, why he made the decision, and how he decided to spend the budget instead. Beyond that, we also dive into new programs he's trying out at Loxo and lessons and learnings from his time at Refine Labs. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. First of all, thank you for joining. I've been following your content for a long time, since, I don't know, 2021 or whatever, something like that. And, from the like Refine Labs gang, in a sense, you after Chris, you were my favorite in a sense. Like out of all the people,
I'll take it.
Posting on Refine Labs, like I felt like your content was always super interesting and tactical and valuable. So I'm very excited to dive in. Now, the topic of the Google Ads, I want to make sure that we touch on that in the beginning. Now, some background on you. When I first noticed you was when you joined Refine Labs, or when you were at Refine Labs, and the content you were putting out. I think your title at the end was kind of VP of demand gen, director of demand gen, something like that. And then you joined Loxo when? How long ago?
January this year.
January.
So
okay.
Yeah.
So a couple months, and you've been putting out content there. And so, I saw that post that you did about the Google Ads, and obviously it resonated with people. It got quite a lot of attention. And so I wanted to focus on that first, because clearly it resonated with people. And two, I just see it, like we work with customers, and just recently we have a customer who's in the logistics space. They've been around for 20 years. They've been spending $15,000 per month on Google Ads for forever, basically. And just recently they cut it down to basically nothing for the same reason. They were just like, okay, like economy is not good. We need to like figure out how to save. And so Google Ads it was. I did an analysis for them in Salesforce, where, because they've been around for 20 years. They had Salesforce data since like 2007 or something when they first implemented it. And I just broke down where leads come from, where opportunities come from, and then where closed ones come from, and then where like total revenue come from.
Mm-hmm.
And, you could see that in 2008, like 30% of their opportunities that closed came from Google Ads. And then as you move along the dates, they still got leads from Google Ads, like in 2022. But first of all, it was way fewer.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you actually project it out into like, did they actually close, and did they actually, it was like 0.3% of total revenue was, the contact was created from Google Ads. So
yeah,
maybe before we dive into that, give us a little context about just Loxo as the company, so we have some context around like, how big you guys are, and maybe how much the overall marketing budget is, so we kind of, or what percentage you were spending on Google Ads, so we kind of get a feel for that.
So Loxo, we're a startup, but we're not a startup. So the way I explain it, it's a small company, been around for 10 years, but we're bootstrapped. So that's why we're still a startup. We're finally hitting growth scale stage, but we don't have VC backing. It's all been grow by profitability, make your own revenue. So
crazy concept.
Yeah, right. That's how it used to be. Who knew? But I will say it's very nice not having a VC breathing down your neck every quarter asking for leads. So been around 10 years. We're in the HR tech, recruiting tech space. So super easy way to think about it is, if you're a recruiter, you have like 10 platforms that you're trying to use: an applicant tracking system where you track people that have filled out your application, a tool like LinkedIn or something where you're sourcing potential candidates, an email sending tool, a reporting tool, a contact scraping tool. We have all that in one place, which just makes it so much more efficient. And the beauty of focusing on this for 10 years with their own money is that we've been intentionally trying to build the best possible product with the best data. So it's not like we're just trying to eat market share and use the like consolidation as the thing, but it's consolidation meets quality, meets efficiency. So I could go on for days about that, but that's more or less our background. And so as we are a bootstrapped company, I don't have millions of dollars from VC saying, growth at all costs.
Can I assume correctly that you guys are somewhere between the 5 to 10 million ARR range?
We're between 10 and 20.
Oh,
So
wow,
yeah,
efficient.
last year was 5 to 10. So yeah, growing fast. That's, hey,
Wow,
marketing's
nice.
working. Yeah, good problem to have. So yeah, between 10 to 20 million annual recurring revenue. And then yeah, for the budget, as I said, when I did my analysis of $100,000 in spend, and I'm looking over here because I'm looking at the post and
Yeah.
something else I'll share in a little bit. That was 6-7 months worth of Google ad spend. So
Mhm.
I'll let people kind of insinuate what they want of how much total budget we have, knowing how I usually split up budgets and everything, but
Yeah,
it's a hefty amount to go to Google ads and
totally.
within 6-7 month time frame.
Okay, and then what first prompted you to look into that? Because obviously, I mean, I'm sure with the economic situation, everyone's kind of looking at that, but I'm assuming there was already some intuition for you to even dig deeper here. So was there some trigger that made you look deeper here?
Two, and it was ironic timing with it. So one, like I watch every day what comes in and how they come in. So platform attribution, how'd you hear about us attribution?
Yep.
Google, I absolutely saw like it did drive inbound for us. There's no question about it. I'm not saying everyone needs to get rid of Google. Like it
Right.
did drive inbounds, like you saw. But between this, like the intuition that you said, where it's like it's getting more and more expensive, I didn't feel that we were getting the best bang for our buck there relative to the other channels that we were
Right.
using and what I was seeing there. And then the other side of it was our CEO Matt's like, I don't like Google. I don't feel it's that impactful for us. So when you also have him questioning it, I was
Right.
like, perfect. Like, let's do what I always do. Let's go to the numbers, let's run an analysis and see how it all pans out.
And then for him, like, where does his intuition come from? Because I feel like that's rare for like the CEO to say that.
Yeah, phenomenally smart dude. Founder-led sales. So he leads a lot of our sales efforts. And so he's doing discovery demos with a lot of prospects as they come in. And that's something
What's your ACV that he's still doing that?
it ranges. He does more of our strategic accounts, I'd say.
Mhm.
So we work with as small as like one recruiter agencies up through your enterprise publicly traded companies that have executive search functions within those organizations.
Right.
So he'll usually work on the larger size
Makes
companies
sense.
with those. But yeah, that's where it's like we have data that comes in for how'd you hear about us and everything, but it's
Did
also
you
part of
install that?
discovery.
Or did they have that in place? Self-reported.
So I've been working with them at Refine. Fun
Ah,
fact. Yeah, so I'd known Matt for a handful of years. We'd always done back and forth, and they were at a point where they wanted to start to grow out marketing. I'm like, I'm not ready to leave Refine. Come work with us. We'll get you off the ground, and then we'll go from there. So they came over to us there. We got them all set up with the playbook and getting those types of things involved. And then, yeah, from the sales process, they do proper discovery. You know, where'd you come across us? What all
yep.
did you view? To talk to people. So we have all of these data points to understand what collectively moves the needle in the right direction, not what one point should we do more or less of.
Now tell me about how you actually did the analysis. And if you want to share your screen, I saw that sheet that you shared somewhere. If you want to share
Yeah.
that, feel free. I think our audience likes kind of the more nitty-gritty stuff. So free to
Okay.
get
Yes,
down
I
to the
will.
details.
I'll definitely share this. One thing I do absolutely want to caveat is this advice is not for everyone. Do your own research, use this sheet, and just use critical thinking to understand what's right for your organization.
Totally.
So before I start sharing the sheet, all background on how we set up paid search, because a lot of people who may or may not know how I operate a lot of marketing is like we had set up only true high intent keywords and branded keywords for this. So I wasn't going after like how should I be recruiting or top 10 recruiting tips. It was like best applicant tracking system software or things of that nature where it's people that are actively searching, they want to find a solution for a problem. So what happened when I got into this analysis was that even when I was going after some of those types of terms, like the numbers from this analysis did not justify continuing to try to continue to acquire customers that way.
Right.
So the spreadsheet that I'll now share is a handy dandy little way to start to see this. And let me know, is this appearing big enough?
This is
Do I need to
readable.
zoom in a little bit? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. But if you guys don't want to zoom in, just put it in the chat.
Yeah, I can zoom in a little bit more. So, and this is an example. I'm not going to share the one that I used for our purposes.
Totally.
But the basic concept of it is start to you should have campaigns structured in a decent way. So usually it's like you have your branded campaign, you have high intent non-brand keywords, you have low mid intent non-brand keywords. We didn't have any of these. And then some people do competitors. It all depends on how much budget you have and everything else. So in this example, I used Drift. It's a very familiar brand that a lot of people know. Again, these numbers are all made up. I have no affiliation with them. But it's like you'd have, Drift chatbot for your branded keywords, for high intent non-brand, chatbot software, conversational AI platform. Then when you get to the low mid intent, where it's like chatbot, website chat, sales enablement, some broader terms that aren't exactly people necessarily looking for a solution. And then you could have competitors. So intercom in this instance. So where this becomes fun, if you're a data geek like us, what I start to do is you go into Salesforce, HubSpot, whatever CRM or tracking platform you have, but you can go, and since this is a last touch channel,
right?
You're trying to capture demand here. You should have UTM set up, or another method. HubSpot has like the original source drill down too, things like that. So you can go and see, okay, for our brand keyword, for example, in the last 6 months, we had 80 leads that came in. People said, I want to talk to sales from the Drift keyword. I had 30 that came in from Drift chatbot. And then where you start to pull that thread is tracking, okay, of those 80 leads, how many turned into opportunities? And of those opportunities, how many turned into customers? So this is all the same sample size. You didn't have 105 total leads here. You had 80, but you're just looking at the funnel progression of that, because where most people usually spend their time is in this column right here, cost per lead. Like, how do I get as many leads as possible at the lowest cost? And that's why brand usually looks really good, and low mid intent non-brand usually looks good.
High volume.
As you're going to get exactly. So where we start to go is, well, I want to know how many people, one, are converting from lead to opportunity. Are they qualified? Are they even the people that we want? And then what are the costs of those? Jumping over to column L, and I'll get over to these in a few minutes. I look at, how well are these converting? So 25%, 50%, 100, or like low intent non-brand, as you were saying earlier. Volume, usually you see a lot of these are like ebook downloads, webinar signups, or they're just researching. They're not really ready to talk to sales. So the numbers that often look really good in cost per lead, when you go down a level, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, that's $6,000 for an opportunity. That got expensive really fast. And so that's where you really want to start comparing. And these are the types of numbers where, as I was doing the analysis, it got into what is actually working for us.
Bala's asking, is this first touch attribution? Sorry if this was covered before I joined.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So this is last touch. So when they finally entered the sales process, because when I think of Google Ads, I think of, these are people who I want to capture once they're ready to start that conversation, like capture demand in the Chris Walker speak. So cost per op, and then same type of thing, then opportunity to one conversion rate. And that's going to ultimately get you to your CAC, customer acquisition cost. And that, at the end of the day, is what you should be optimizing towards, because what keywords, if I want people who are actively ready to buy, how can I do that in the most efficient way, the most cost-effective way? So you have those as kind of the big buckets. And then in between, what I like to do, just if you want to optimize your paid search overall, I like to look at, okay, we have a brand campaign. We spent $36,000 in total on that campaign. What you'll usually have is, if you look at the keywords that turn into leads, you can then say, okay, how much spend occurred within those? And you'll see here, you've got $35,000. That means you probably have some other keyword in there that didn't convert at all, $1,000. Okay. Same thing for high intent non-brand. Usually for brand, you shouldn't have too much leak. But when you start getting to high intent non-brand, mid to low intent, you're going to start seeing that number increase more and more. So I'm saying, if those keywords, you've been running them for a while, they're spending and they haven't even turned in a lead for you, shut those off. That's inefficient spend. So that's what this percentage of spend for non-leads is doing. And then the same thing for pipeline. So you can start to get into, you see like sales enablement didn't get us any opportunities at all. So that's going to be non-pipeline spend. So add that in. And again, if you really need to get more and more efficient, where you want to know what's turning into qualified opportunities, start pulling out keywords that aren't turning into opportunities. And that's what leads us to where I landed for customer acquisition side. What keywords were or were not leading to customers for us at the end of the day. So, I can share this template with you. I think you might have a link to it if you want to drop it into the chat or anything for anyone, but feel free to absolutely use this. So just want people to know how you can calculate, like, is your Google Ad stuff worth it to just like show, I'm not saying this just like PR stunt, but we
That's a
actually
PR
did.
stunt.
Yeah. Sorry, Google. So you need two things for it. You need to know your ACV, so your revenue per deal, and you need to know your win rate from where you're measuring. So the funnel we showed, like lead to win or sales qualified opportunity to win. And so what you can do then is you can use those to calculate your acceptable cost per lead, cost per op, cost per deal, customer acquisition cost. So you'll work backwards from a lot of SaaS, like your 12-month ad spend payback period. So if a customer stays for 1 year, for 12 months, like, will you recoup your money? If no, it's not a great investment. I know some companies 2-3 year contract, that's fine. But again, 12-month is kind of like from an ad spend, because you have other, if you go up level, you have marketing. So that's also your head count, your agency retainers, all that. So it quickly adds up to like, you definitely should be getting at least your ad spend back in the first year. So for an example, we'll use round numbers. ACV, $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you know your lead to closed won rate, benchmark industry, like 5% on inbound demo requests, and then your sales qualified opportunity to close one win rate, 25%. So again, easy round numbers. What I would do to understand what's an acceptable cost per lead, I would take $10,000, your ACV, multiply that by your lead to closed won rate, 5%. So $500. That's, if you win at 5% for every lead that comes in, that's your 12-month ad CAC payback period. If you're above that, should evaluate it. If you're below that, great, push it, keep going. And you'll still want to track it down the funnel. But again, these are just kind of the baseline numbers. Cost per opportunity, same thing, $10,000, but multiplied by 25%. So $2,500. That's what's an acceptable rate. And then customer acquisition cost, $10,000 times 1, $10,000. So if you're below any of those numbers, good, like it's working. If you're above that, it's not good. You said earlier, we have a low ACV. That makes it really hard on Google because Google's expensive. 2012, I could go on and $10,000 would get me a heck of a lot further than it does now. So that's where economies of scales have completely changed. And you can see when you go and plug these in for each of those keywords that we showed in the sheet earlier, like what keywords are not worth spending. And so when I did this, like $3,600 per year for one user is our low end ACV. Like I had 2 keywords that had less than a 12-month ad CAC payback period, and both were branded terms. So I was like, is it worth it at that point if those are the only ones?
Right.
Like 70% of our new customers from paid search came in through branded terms, but the ad CAC payback on those ones was greater than 12 months. The 30% who came in from non-brand were more than 12-month ad CAC. And I even did an analysis. I was like, this is not looking good. Like, do I really want to make this decision? I looked at like correlations between paid search spend, direct and organic traffic, or the total volume of high intent hand raisers. And there wasn't anything super strong there. So yeah, I did that about a month ago. And then just before this, actually, I jumped on, I was like, how's this working? Did this pan out? So, in the month since it's been paused, our hand raisers. So hand raisers, we have dual motion, sales led, product led. August is up 7% in hand raisers. So we're actually, the only channel change was pulling paid search, and surprise, no surprise, organic has picked up the slack from paid search. So we've seen more conversions on organic. And again, that's a testament. Well, if 70% came from brand before, they're looking for us. They're intentional about that. So they're willing to scroll past the top 3 ads to come and find us. Next level down, opportunities. We had 18% more opportunities from July that came in from these hand raisers. So that's the count of opportunities. Our pipeline is flat month over month, but they're 30-day opportunities. They need time to mature. So I'm not concerned anywhere there. And then the closed one, I need to wait for those to go through the sales process and see. But like first 30 days, that's kind of showing me the case that this wasn't Google. It hasn't been as impactful as it used to be for us, and that the move to new platforms or how we want to reallocate the spend, like it was the right decision for us.
So, I mean, this is an awesome template, but it's also not rocket science, right? Like you can track this down pretty quickly. What do you think is the reason that it's just not what most companies do?
A couple of reasons. One, you have an agency running your search for you, and
who is interested in increasing spend.
Yeah. So when I was at Refine, we were unique in that we just had a retainer fee. Most agencies I've used before are percentage of your media spend. So, hey, I'm going to get you a lot of cost per leads really cheap. And also you're losing a lot of impression share due to budget. If you increase this, they're making money at the end of the day, and it's no fault of their own. That's their business model. That's what they should be doing. So And I even made this mistake early in my career. I didn't give the agency I used access to our CRM. So all they knew was work off of the lowest cost per lead at the highest converting rate and see where we have budget to add more. So it's something that we all learn, we all go through. But I think that's part of it. And the other part of it is, it's always been done this way. So you have someone who's always run Google ads. I've worked with execs who've said, I don't care. I want us to show up for our branded search terms. There's any number of reasons, but why I like going to this type of exercise is it's really hard to argue with numbers, especially with those execs. When you can get to this level of play, like, I get what you want to do, but this is not driving revenue for us. Totally. Here's what can. So when you can start to have that conversation with them, that's where it becomes very different. So how do you calculate out what is an acceptable cost per lead for you? What's an acceptable cost per op? So when you do start this analysis, you can figure out like what keywords are worth spending on, which keywords should we be pulling out.
I think it's also like no one's incentivized to find it, right? Because even if you have it in-house and you have a marketing team running it and you don't have an agency, most of them get scored on cost per lead. So you're doing a good job there. And then the sales team, it's not coming out of their budget, so they don't care. And they might know that these leads are low quality. They just don't follow up on them. But, and then, leadership might be just too far removed to even look into this stuff. So, it still baffles my mind how many, confession, we only recently started getting into the CRM of our customers, right? But it happened on multiple times because we work with a marketing agency, with a marketing department. And so I asked, could we get access? And they don't have it. They're like, I need to go to my sales team to, like, I can give you HubSpot, but the real stuff happens in Salesforce. I need to go to someone else to give you access. They don't have that access. In your post that you wrote, you had, you went to your CEO, you presented that, seems like not a lot of pushback. And you said there are 3 things I would want to do instead with that budget. What were those 3 things? Or what ideas did you have, or what else you could do with that budget that could be more efficient?
So the 3 things were, I don't want to say specific to us. They're probably relatively common for most people, but again, I applied the context of our situation. So branding paid search, here's why, presented the data, walked him through everything. And then, as you said, 3 options. So the first one was reinvest in channels that are working for us, but we're far from maxing out. And so this is what a lot of organizations will typically do. You should probably have somewhere between 2 to 4 solid performing channels.
Which are those for you right now?
For us, recruiters love LinkedIn. So I bet you can guess where we spend a lot of our time. They have to be on the platform more or less. So LinkedIn's a huge one for us. YouTube.
Organic or paid?
Both. They're all over LinkedIn. Our company didn't have a huge presence before. So we're building out the organic side, and I've got a podcast going for us to start getting more content in the loop with ourselves, positioning different members of our team as thought leaders and working with other members in the space. But for right now, we kind of have to buy our way in because we don't all have 100,000 followers like Chris does or others, where we need to be able to get in.
You're on the way there.
Yeah, far from it. But LinkedIn, yeah, so paid organic there. And there's a surprising number, and I would not have expected this, but thank goodness for things like how'd you hear about us? YouTube is a big one. Oh. And I think that's partially the way that some of the upcoming generation learns is there's more of self-discovery and like, how do I solve for this? I don't want to talk to a CSM. I don't want to talk to a sales rep. I want to just go and figure it out on my own or see what people recommend. So
is that a Loxo YouTube channel?
We do have one, but we weren't doing anything with it at the time. It was honestly a video repository for a lot of our training. So this was coming through either, like, I'll call them YouTube influencers who were talking about the product, or just review type people. And so this was telling us this is an untapped opportunity. If we're not putting anything into it, there's people talking about us. How do we leverage it? So that's a current initiative. Experiment, more or less.
So when you see that, is your first thought, oh, I want to start a Loxo YouTube channel? Or is that I want to build a relationship with these 3 whatever key influencers who already mentioned that, and just kind of get them as ambassadors?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we had a channel, but it was not optimized or structured well. So I took the route of like, let's build our own thing, because as you know, it's getting harder and harder to rank, going back to Google, on SEO standpoint for written posts, articles, and more people are wanting to learn by seeing versus reading. So our vision with it is that we are going to be building and creating more like thought leadership, best practice type videos. And then people are going to kill me for this, but I call it like SEO for YouTube, where it's like you make chapters into it, you make sure that you're showing up for the right terms and everything. And those are showing up quite high in the Google organic SERP. So
Right.
I haven't done too much with influencers there yet, mostly because one, budget. We don't have a lot of money to do something like that too. We are building out an affiliate program, so I don't have anything to incentivize them just quite yet.
Yeah.
And the other part is that it starts to get not murky, but some are users of our product, some aren't. And if we want them to really go into our product, it's like, well, do we then train them and show them, have to like run them through our course, get them to do it, or babysit them for like what you can and can't say about us? And we didn't have the bandwidth for a while to do that. I just hired a couple members to the team that will get to doing that, but it's prioritizing. Like we've got so many different options here. And so back up like a level of LinkedIn, YouTube are working well for us. Well, if I know we are scraping the surface on LinkedIn, that's working better for us. I only have so many hours in a day. Like how do I prioritize? Where does YouTube fall with that sub segment relative to some of the other efforts that I want to take on?
So where does it fall? If we if we take that 100K that you now recouped from the Google ads, and you have LinkedIn and YouTube, and YouTube is more of an experiment. LinkedIn, it's working and there's still so much untapped. Like, do you do 80-20? Do you do?
So that leads to the other two options. So you could reinvest it in existing channels that are working well. Option two, redirect that spend over to a big bet. What's something that you aren't doing at all, but you have a hunch towards, or something that you want to try out.
Right.
And then third option is, so because we aren't VC backed, we aren't publicly traded.
Save it.
Exactly. I can save the money for a rainy day. I can save it for something that I want. And that is a very specific team member in 2024. I cannot afford that individual right now, but if I save up, I can. So that's where you've got all these different options that I presented him. And he's just like, you own the budget, do what you want with it. I trust you. So the best part about this is it's not pick one. You can do a combination of all of these. So say I had that $100,000, I could say, let's put an extra 50 into LinkedIn right now. And then I want to try something with a big bet. Let's put 25 in there, and then let's sock away another 25. So example numbers, but
did you end up doing? Like, how did you think through that decision for you? I mean, obviously everyone will land on a different kind of, but how do you think through that?
So mine, I'm going with options 2 and 3. I'm splitting it between a big bet and pocketing it for that team member. The reason I'm not investing it in other channels yet are, one, I just added new team members in the beginning of this month. So I didn't have the time or the bandwidth to be able to scale to other channels to do more on those. We have a very sound footprint on the current channels, but I wasn't at the point of diminishing returns yet, but it wasn't going to be like, I absolutely have to be doing more, otherwise our business is going to flounder. They were producing very well. So I think that the outcome of the big bet that will get in place next year, and the individual who will be able to add to the team will return much higher than if I put the extra $50,000 into LinkedIn this year.
With YouTube, do you plan to do anything with shorts, or just focused on a long form? Like, I'm on your YouTube channel right now. It looks like it's basically like interview format, right? 14, 10, 30 minutes long. So kind of that style.
Yeah. So that's the podcast, and I'll call it 101 level right now, where it's just, let's get our podcast over there. Let's get some better videos. Yeah. We are going to be experimenting with shorts later on. So part of the YouTube experiment, and that was one of the new team members who's joined, that's something that they have experience in and want to test out. So the micro videos that we make for LinkedIn, I also have the team producing in 9:16. So once we are ready for that, we're going to have plenty of content to do it. But I want to make sure that we've got what we need. And again, like, we don't need to rush into an experiment just to rush into it. Let's make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success to do it properly. So that'll come in time. That's probably going to be a Q4 initiative for us once they're settled in and have some time to work through that. But yeah, to your point, exactly. It's like, that's kind of an upcoming area where we are seeing a lot of traction. So YouTube
Are you
Shorts.
Thinking to just repost to TikTok, because why not? Or are you not going to start a new channel?
Potentially. Again, like, getting it in the proper size is one thing, but having the, like, how do we want to use TikTok? Like, we had a Twitter account, and I told our CEO, I'm like, I don't manage it. No one engages with us. Like we just kind of have it. We don't need to continue by any means until we have the resources to do so. So for TikTok, I'm taking the same approach. Like I know there's plenty of recruiters on there, but I want to make sure that when we do show up, we do so in a thoughtful way that's going to drive impact, not just slap videos up and hope that people watch them. But I don't like to do anything that's just like mediocre is kind of the thing. So when I do go into, I want to make sure that there's a thought out strategy, a plan, and that we can pay attention to it to make sure that we're giving it the proper time of day to experiment and validate.
Interesting. Yeah, we have the opposite approach. We started doing shorts a couple months ago, and I mean, we don't really get customers from YouTube. I don't think it ever showed up on our self-reported attribution. But we've been just reposting our videos on YouTube for a long time, but nothing happened there. Like we got like 3 views, 5 views, 1 view, like nothing. And we had like, after 2 years of doing that, we had like 24 subscribers or something like that. So it was for us more like a content library, because then we had the video, we could embed it, we could send it out easily. It was more of that nature. And then we started playing around with shorts a couple months ago. And I mean, it's nothing crazy, but we're now at 100 subscribers. Right. So like 24 subscribers in like 2 years, and then went to 100 subscribers in like whatever, 3 months or something like that. Right. And so the organic views are definitely better. We're actually getting comments there, where it's like some random people like pushing back or adding some comments. So that's interesting. And we're just throwing them on TikTok because we're like, it's the same video. So like, let's see. But I agree. Like when you, I just want to see like the signal there. And then if you really want to crush TikTok, I'm sure like you need to make it a full focus and create TikTok native. You can't just like repost the same videos. You want to have like the green screen and like all that stuff going on. But anyway.
Yeah.
So LinkedIn, YouTube, are those basically the main ones, or did anything else show up on self-reported attribution that like surprised you, that was like, what?
We get a number of different responses. Some Facebook's a big one. You'd be surprised how many recruiters are also in Facebook communities. If I wasn't a marketer, I'd have Facebook off my phone 10 years ago, but have to have a Facebook account in order to advertise there. So we do decent amount. It's nowhere near what we do on LinkedIn or any of those, but we are on Facebook. Reddit's one that I always come back to. It always cracks me up, but there's a huge recruiting community on Reddit, and it's always fun to see because it's anonymous, right? So you don't know who's doing what. You get the unfiltered everything from both sides of it, from the candidates to the recruiters themselves. And it's a great spot to hear like what's currently going on. So that's a great spot to think of content ideas and other items. But we have had a number of people hear about us on Reddit.
Interesting. Yeah. And then is there anything for your priorities? So you mentioned, you want to build out the LinkedIn organic side a little bit more. And then the YouTube experiment, including shorts with the new, is there anything else on your radar that you're experimenting with, that you want to try out, next programs that you want to start, anything of that sort?
There's a lot we always want to get to. We've got some foundational things we're still working through our website. There's a lot of pages that need to be updated still. So it's balancing that with, we don't have any singular direct competitor, which is really interesting. Matt, our CEO, has been creating this category for a while. Before Chris Walker, before Chris Lockhead, all those guys were talking about it, but it was the vision of like everything in one place. So we have point solution competitors. So our feature is someone else's product, which is really interesting because they can, it's really easy to push a message when that's your full product. But when it gets to our level, if you go to our homepage, it's like, well, what feature do we focus on, which is a product for someone else? So how do you bring the messaging up a level? So we're really focusing on how do we speak to everyone at a broadest level, and then how do we speak to individual segments? Because recruiters are not one size fit all. They are very different depending on what they do, whether you're trying to place the next CEO at an organization like BP, or you're trying to find a truck driver, logistics, short-term hauler for, some job. So you've got different types of recruiters for all those, and how they go about recruiting are very, very differently. And our product supports all of them. We've built 6 different versions to support it, but unless they self-identify, we have to make sure that we're speaking to that on the appropriate page for them where they can self-select. And that's where we start to go deeper. But that's where we're currently doing a lot of testing and balancing with not only our website, but also the ads themselves. How broad do we go in the ads? How narrow do we go in the ads? Who do we tune them towards? Do we play more with segmentation where it starts to get a little bit more expensive on the CPMs as the audience gets smaller? Do we go broader? We have a PLG side. So do we just go after the end users? Do we go after the buyers? So there's a lot of options that we're going with, and not all at once though. So that's the thing, is like, how do we start to prioritize which ones we think will be big impact to small impact, and then start working our way through them.
Do you have any takeaways or insights already on that as you start to think through that and experiment with that?
It's really hard to come up with a concise, broad level message that resonates. I stared at my computer for 2 days and it still wasn't great. And it doesn't land well either, usually, right, when you do have to go to that level. So I'll go back to sharing my screen again. The biggest pushback that we used to get is, if you're not built for my type of recruitment, if you're not built for executive search, if you're not built for staffing agencies, if you're not built for RPO, then you're not for us. So our headline used to be become a hiring machine. Well, one, what's that mean? And two, they come in and they think, oh, well, they're for small agencies, they're not for us. So I need to make sure that people knew right off the bat, we are built for them, because we do have the 6 different versions of the product. So this was one of the first things I had to think about, is what is it that we do? So we're a talent intelligence platform, but how can we make sure that people, when they first come to the page, they do understand we are for them. And then we get into a little bit more of the bottom details in the H2 of like, so ATS is a product for someone, CRM is a product for someone, outbound recruiter, data sourcing, those are products. We have that all in one spot. So this seems so simple, so elementary, but this is where I have so much respect.
And you
for
threw
product
that AI in
marketers
there too.
Fun fact, we're on our 4th generation of AI. This has actually been something.
Okay, you're actually AI.
Yeah, no, we truly are. It's not just like a buzzword for us. It killed us when that started to come out. But yeah, totally. We're on our 4th generation, because that's a huge part of the product, is like, we're talent intelligence. So it'd be hard pressed to call ourselves a talent intelligence if we didn't have any intelligence actually built into the product.
So let me get your take on something that I've been seeing, and this would apply to this, and I'm curious about your reaction. So there's category creation, right? Marketers love it, buzzword. And it's generally around products, right? So everyone wants to create a category for the product. I've been seeing some companies play with industry category creation. So the idea is basically, if you sell to a bunch of different industries, financial services, professional services, HR, whatever the thing, tech and software, the problem is kind of what you mentioned. On the one hand, people tell you pick one and focus on it, because then you can have tight messaging and it's very clear, but then you're excluding all the other types of companies who can totally use your product and get value from it. But when you have all of them on there, then it suddenly becomes really hard to get a cohesive message, and it's kind of confusing, and you have all these different industries. And then the question is, do they still focus on me if they're doing this for 20 different industries? So I've seen some companies basically think about, okay, what is the similarity between these different industries that makes them compatible with our product? For example, one company, Comex, they have a sales enablement platform, works for a bunch of different industry. They say their product works for explanatory services. So that can be agencies, that can be consultancies. It's just anything that's explanatory. Another example, a company that we just started working with, their software basically helps review and simplify super complicated documents. So think about RFPs that are 100 pages long, these like government contracts that are like hundreds of pages long with tons of requirements, and just being able to parse that and analyze it and kind of work through it faster. But again, it works for government contractors, it works for the defense industry, it works for all kinds of different. And so like the common pattern is like complex, if you're dealing with complex, important documents, right? And so figuring out how can I package that in a way that it still looks like we're focusing on one, but it speaks to everything, but you need actually to be exclusive. So you don't just say we work with B2B companies, but there's a common pattern that makes it work for all of these. So I'm just curious to get your reaction on it, and whether you think that's a good strategy or that's just a recipe for failure, because then you're not speaking to anyone.
That's a good question. I don't know that I'm qualified to answer it. I can say like what my gut kind of
Yeah,
says,
what's your gut?
but it's similar to product category. It's going to rely on education. Like, do you know that I'm an explanatory service
Yeah.
provider? Like, what's that mean? So it makes sense from a messaging standpoint that you can use that phrase, but first people have to understand, am I within that bucket? What's that
Right.
mean? So can absolutely work, if especially if it's hard to combine. Like the hospitality industry is a perfect one. If you're a hotel bellhop or you're a waiter at a restaurant, those are two very different jobs, but hospitality is what it rolls up to.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's really easy to say we make software for hospitality. People are like, oh, that's me. So
Right.
if you do that, you just have to make sure that the market kind of knows that's how you're redefining them.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit. I've seen now, I don't know how many takes where people talk about first 90 days as a new head of marketing,
Yeah.
VP of marketing, CMO. You just kind of went through that recently where you came into Loxo as the VP. Now, I'm assuming it's a little bit different because you've been working with them together, but talk to me how you, as you've stepped into that role, thought about like what to prioritize, talk to customers for the first month, just meet everyone on the team for the first month, or, implement a program right away, or like how did you approach like your first 90 days as the VP?
So first 90 days, yeah, I went through this exact exercise. So you mentioned like, I had familiarity with Loxo. I knew some of their struggles, opportunities, things that we wanted to work with. The simplified version of it is I barely touched demand gen in the first 90 days. A lot of it was fundamental foundational items. So I'm not an operations background, but I did a lot of operations work. So making sure some of the basics are covered, make sure all opportunities have contacts associated with them. Because if you don't, then you have no idea where they came from, what's working, what's not, what's the handoff process from someone coming to the website to sales. How's that looking? Is it meeting expectations? Where are people falling through? What do customers, prospects want more or less of once those conversations start? Is sales equipped to handle it? So I was very, very close with our BDR and sales team for the first 90 days, going through and working on a lot of that, because my view is we had existing demand. I don't need to add more to it yet. I need to make sure that we're making the most of what we have before we go and start adding more at the top. Otherwise, we're just going to be spending more to have the same kind of fallout. So there's a lot of work within we use Salesforce as our CRM. So a lot of Salesforce operations, process items, working with the team there. Education, learning. I do not have a recruiting background. It is eerily similar to selling, like marketing, B2B software. You're basically marketing a job instead of a software piece. So how do you attract people to want to work for your company or a position you're recruiting for? But yeah, really just trying to familiarize myself with the product, with the market. We did not have any defined like branding. So we had logos and everything, but we always used a different shade of blue on different assets or other little things there. So just tightening some things up, because again, I do think you shouldn't be so rigid that we only use this blue, we only use this black, we only use this white, because also guess what 100 other SaaS companies do? They only use blue, they only use black, they only use white. So say, these are guidelines. We usually lean towards blue, but we don't always have to use blue. So like in our last campaign, we did this like super bright, like neon pink purple and a throwback to like 80s neon vibe stuff. And it works really well. So just be consistent with it, but you also have to make sure it still ties back to your brand. So many better people that could talk to that on this podcast than me. I know the creative people that I work with always kind of cringe every time I come with an idea, but it's how you stand out. Because if it looks like an ad, it smells like an ad, it probably is an ad, and it's not going to attract people anymore.
Yep.
So yeah, did a lot of that, and then digging into business numbers. So win-loss analysis, lifetime value to customer acquisition cost by segment types, geographies that we sell in, a lot of familiarization before I figure out where do we need to prioritize what markets, what segments, what messaging. I needed to understand that before I started go on these different demand gen principles.
Do you remember what, after you did that kind of analysis and just, fixing the handoff and everything, what was the first big item that you wanted to spend budget on that we were like, this is what I want to spend money on?
LinkedIn ads. We had a phenomenal win rate, over 80% opportunities created. Yeah. That was my exact
That's
take too. I was just
impossible.
like,
What?
Hold on. When an opportunity was created, I was like, are we creating too late? This was literally come to a demo and they say, yes, this looks interesting, I want to move forward. And that's the power of our product. I was like, this is unbelievable. And this has
What's
been the
your
biggest.
ACV? What's the deal size roughly?
So our pricing's on our website. Our packages start at like single user, $3,600 a year. So it's a low barrier to entry. You know, the more seats you buy for your users, the better deal you're going to get, or the longer you want to stay with us. You know, it's more or less like that, but usually we get 2 to 3 user shops. So call it $7,000 is an average kind of ACV.
That's still impressive. 80%.
Yeah. And if I'll show you why, because this was the light bulb moment that I was like, you know, we need to make a visual that really speaks to this. So pricing page, we've got, as I said, you know, you can see all of our pricing, build annually, build monthly. Like we don't hide anything, because one, that's the biggest thing, as I said, like we have to stop hiding this. People want to know. But this section right down here is the bad boy, that is where we would always win when people saw it. So they saw the product, they saw how easy it was, but they were like, man, $3,600 is so expensive. And then we start to compare it to what they're currently paying for everything else. Because yes, $3,600 is expensive if you compare it to just an applicant tracking system, or you compare it to just your sourcing tool, you know, insert that. But you have to pay for all of these compared to, we have it in one spot. It's a heck of a lot better. It's a heck of a lot easier to use. It's like, now you tell me which is more expensive. So that's where like these types of things are like, holy cow, like this really will be better, will be easier. So our biggest problem has been awareness. The number of demos that I would also get on and listen to that I'd say, I wish I knew about Loxo sooner. Well, that tells me another thing is, you know, we're just not in. There was a study, I forget when, but it was basically like first list principle, where when people go to buy, they usually have 2 to 3 vendors already in mind. Sometimes they'll open it up for more for RFP or to do the due diligence, but 90% of purchases are made from one of those 3 vendors that are already top of mind. We weren't on that list for a long time. So how do we get on that list? It was a brand awareness issue. So keep showing up, make sure people know us, because when we do get them in front of sales, we win. That was our biggest hurdle. So how do we get more people in? Brand awareness, attracting people to us, letting them know what we do. And that's where I was like, it's recruiters, sales reps, marketers. Those 3 are on LinkedIn all the time. So this played right into my experience with Refine and how I knew to leverage a LinkedIn platform.
It still blows my mind, some of these bootstrap because when you're in the software world, like everyone knows about the big brands that got all that funding, and everyone's trying to chase those. And there's like these hidden champions that are just crushing it, but they didn't raise that B round. But do you feel like, I mean, this is more like I guess more strategic, you know, like getting 80% win rate, having basically no competitors, that might also come from the fact that you don't have a lot of brand awareness, right? No one knows that you guys are running this operation. Now that you're scaling this and you're sharing these things on the podcast, I don't know, is there like a fear that, you know, competitors will pop up now that people realize that this is a thing? And
they've been working on it for years, but we have a 10-year head start on them. That's where like the beauty of, our CEO and co-founder, who's a CTO, have been playing the long game with this. So they're months ahead with the product, with the data, with how we go about it. And again, we have it in one spot. So point solutions, like they can't compete with us for, like, if people want to do that, they can go and use that. But at the end of the day, if they want to, like, we're helping recruiters 2 to 5x their output, more placements. At the end of the day, they get paid based on how many candidates they place. So it's hard to argue when you have cost efficiency and workflow efficiency, which is what we give them on both fronts.
Do you feel like right now is also just a really good timing, because, you know, people talk about this bundling, unbundling, and, you know, with the situation in the economy, lots of companies are looking at, do we really need these 37 different tools? Can we just consolidate here a little bit and cut down on all these licenses that we have?
It comes up a lot. A platform that we're streaming on right now is very expensive for licenses when you start paying for the recruiter side of it. So there are a lot of people that are like, and we even recommend, we say, don't get rid of all of them, but you can reduce the number that you need. And even reducing one of them will pay for this platform for you. So
it's good being a marketer when you have an amazing product, huh?
Yeah, that's what I tell the team. I'm like, you guys make my job easy. You have a killer product. You know, we make it all easy. It's just, how do we amplify it from there? So yeah, it's a fun...
that going into it, Like, was that a big driver of why you took this role?
I did not know it was going to be. I was thinking this is a very crowded space. What am I getting myself
Huh.
into? So yeah, that was going to be the challenge. Why I took this job was, one, bootstrapped. I've worked with enough VC-backed companies. I did not want to deal with that, especially going into this economy. And second is the philosophical alignment of the CEO and the co-founders of like, we want to do marketing this way. We haven't had it before. So it's also really nice when you can see no marketing, like what is the difference between what happens when you apply this type of philosophy, and does it work?
Now, Daniel, Edip, if you guys have questions in here, or the LinkedIn Live have questions, put them in. Otherwise, I'll ask the last question for Sam. All right, I'll just ask the question, Edip or Daniel, if you have a question, just throw them in. You worked at Refine Labs, obviously, for people like me, one of the people to really pay, or companies to really pay attention to. What were like your biggest takeaways, lessons, insights that you took from your time at Refine Labs? What would you say?
Just because things have always been done a certain way doesn't mean that you should continue to, and being empowered to do that. So that was one thing I absolutely will forever be grateful to Chris and Megan for, was like, question assumptions and everything else, just because it's been done that way. Like, run the numbers, do the math, use common sense. So I think Chris was always the biggest proponent, and then putting a voice behind it. So it's not like, I think you got the sense of this when he started posting. So many people had this feeling, but no one was willing to champion it or lead the charge.
Right.
But I remember when I was at my job before Refine, I was running, we had to run webinar after ebook. And I'm like, this does not seem right. And it's like, clicks on ad 1, show them ad 2, clicks on ad 2, show them ad 3, like running these perfectly linear customer journey, digital marketing campaigns and everything. And then it's like, I see Chris's content. I'm like, oh my God, there's someone out there who's talking about this kind of stuff, where I'm just like, I was sitting in meetings and it's like marketing's cheering about hitting, like, we surpassed our lead number. And then you see like sales is missing pipeline by 25%. That shouldn't be happening if you're doing it right. And so that's where it's like, came back to,
yeah,
we've been running the same playbook for 20 years at that company. So times had changed, buying had changed, but the strategy and tactics didn't move with it.
Daniel, you got a question. You turn on your camera. I feel like you're prepping for a question.
Getting official.
Thanks for looping me in there. I do speak to a lot of customers. Quick background. I work for LinkedIn, so I am actually in touch with, plenty of customers. And I like the question that it came down to for me is like, what requirements do customers need to have in place in order to run these analysis, as in their marketing technology, their CRM? Could you maybe dive into like some of the, or at least tool categories maybe that have like a CRM, a reporting tool, and the likes? Because I think, that is where, if you don't have the right data infrastructure, all these analyses will become very, very difficult very quick. Maybe some context on that would be cool.
Yeah, happy to. And course correct me if I start to get off track. I'm notorious in like multi-part questions for forgetting certain parts of it. Data comes before platform every time, data and strategy. So are you able to capture all of that? So in this instance, paid search is very different from how I measure a platform like LinkedIn, Facebook, a more social platform. So for this analysis, you need to have a CRM or a marketing platform that can track UTMs or some other type of a script on a click, so you can understand like what keywords, what campaign, all of that, to map it back to it. So from a tool standpoint, like CRM, marketing automation platform, something there. On like a LinkedIn side specifically, like we push a heavy amount of our budget into LinkedIn. It's a little different because we will get some people who come in directly from ads and convert, but we don't run any direct response. Like nothing drives to our demo page, nothing drives to our pricing page. It's all in-feed messaging, educational content, entertainment content. And to measure that, there's tools out there, like Hockey Stack is growing. They're doing a good job of being able to pull this in, because it's multi-touch attribution in the sense of like, not like how do we attribute channel, but just like what channels are contributing to the grade. I don't personally use them. My stack, Salesforce, HubSpot, how'd you hear about us, text on Treefield, and then sales discovery calls. So what I do is Salesforce HubSpot for the platform attribution. What was the first touch? What was the last touch? So I do get both of those there. How did they first come to our website? How did they finally say like, hey, I'm ready to talk? How'd you hear about us? Free text field. They enter it. I have workflows in HubSpot that bucket it. So I have codes where it says like, if includes like LinkedIn with all of the misspellings, if it has Facebook, Instagram, all of that, bucket in this category. If it says word of mouth, peer, colleague, bucket in this category. So I take that, bucket them, and then I take the third one, which is, as I said earlier, our sales discovery. So we have insights coming from, I talked to a peer, CEO recommended you, something else. I triangulate all of those, and then that does not go to a pretty tool at all. It goes into Google Sheets, which is what I use for a lot of my analysis. And then I start to just do like simple visuals, put it into pie charts, put it into bar charts, just understand what's your breakout of where people are coming from. Because it's not the last touch, but what I like about the how'd you hear about us or the sales discovery question is often that's either the most memorable, the most impactful, most helpful touch point that they remembered you. And that's why you see podcasts come up a lot. Or, I don't buy a product anymore without talking to someone first. And usually it's like, Jenny recommended me to you all. So if you want to talk about, who should I be working with for like a partner referral program or anything else, like those are all the insights that I want. And you don't need some crazy 6-figure visible type tool to understand that. You just have to, one, be able to capture the data, know that it's accurate, and then be able to draw insights from it. Did I answer everything there? I know there's a lot.
It does, definitely.
Okay.
Thanks for going in deep here. I'm just thinking like, the shift even to move to how did you hear about us, and seeing that as a valuable attribution insight that should sometimes even be more important than the marketing analytics platform, which is hard data. That is for many marketers, I think, a big challenge in itself, but it's great to see that the first people are,
Yeah.
ready.
Well, think about the example I just said. I killed paid search and I'm seeing an uptick in organic. Most people, if they only relied on platform, they'd be like, yeah, our SEO efforts are working, but I know I did absolutely nothing to improve our SEO. Honestly, I've went the other direction. So that's where having the context of like adding the how'd you hear about us or other responses, and you understand like that actually had nothing at all to do with those types of tactics.
One last question on the self-reported attribution, because you guys run dual motion PLG SLG. Do you put self-reported also on the PLG on the free trial?
Yeah, you do. So it'll be interesting to see because it's same ICP, but slightly different end users versus potentially decision maker. So it's helpful for us if we ever do want to push harder in one direction or another. Like, hey, we need to increase signups on PLG. Hey, we need more enterprise deals. Where do we push harder?
Sam, thank you so much for your time. I enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed it too. Any last closing thoughts? Anything you want people to know or take away from this conversation?
No, this was fun. I love it. Hopefully this empowers people the way that Chris and Megan did with me to, question things that you've always done, get into the data, add some context and some common sense, and find out what's truly best for impacting the bottom line for your company.
Love it. All right. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, guys. And bye-bye. Peace out.